How's it going? Pastor Andrew coming at you with another thought of the week. Oftentimes when we talk about this relationship that we have with God and relying on Him and everything like that, well, that is 100% true. We focus so much on when we're struggling, when we're having a hard time, and, we turn to God when we're going through all of that stuff. But what about on the flip side? A lot of times we focus just to kind of get through this thing called life about how we get through the hard times. But what happens when, every once in a while we're not having a hard time, when things seem good, we've accomplished a goal of ours, when we get something that we've been asking God for a long period of time and He provides? Like, how do we respond to that? Because again, as a Christian culture, we're just ingrained to only focus on the negatives, only focus on how we can get through hard times. But we don't talk about really and focus on how to handle positivity, how to handle when God has given us something. I think the biggest thing that we have to remember is no matter how hard we work, no matter how hard we try, no matter how much effort we put into something, that ultimately it's still from God. That, yeah, we've tried our hardest, that we put in the work, but God is still the source of what we receive. That it's because of God that we've gotten what we've gotten. We live in a culture and a society today, we don't really focus on that. We don't really believe that because we're so self-centered in that everything that I receive is because of something that I've done. And yeah, God calls us to work hard, to grind, to do everything we possibly can to get something, but ultimately it's going to come from God, and that if it's not in His will, we can try and we can work, but we're not going to get it. We glorify great people of the Bible that struggle and they suffer. People like Job of the Old Testament that was just giving nothing and nothing but bad luck. God just continued to allow him to be, almost pretty much brutalized by the devil. And it teaches us an important lesson of how to endure all of that. But what happens when we have endured? When we have struggled, we fought that good fight, how do we respond to that? The first being, and I kind of mentioned already, we have to glorify God. We have to thank Him because that came from Him. Secondly, we need to humble ourselves, which I think is something that we struggle with. Something that I personally struggle with is the amount of jokes that I make. Humility is something that I personally have to work on a daily basis. Because we have to, again, go back to that source. It came from God. So why should I glorify myself in something that I didn't ultimately get? It comes from God. We have to humble ourselves, not rub it in people's faces when we do well. Oftentimes we see this in athletes. Unfortunately, not so much in 2020 since, sports got canceled this year for the most part from how we know sports. But oftentimes we see these athletes, a baseball player goes up and hits a 400-foot home run. Who do they glorify? Are they glorifying themselves, or are they glorifying God? A quarterback, Patrick Mahomes goes out and throws a 85-yard touchdown pass. Who does he glorify? Himself or God? A lot of times we wish that we have all of this money, we had all of this fame, everything like that. But the thing is yeah, that's cool and all, but it makes it so difficult to humble ourselves to Jesus Christ. It makes it so difficult for ourselves to put God over ourselves. That's why in the Bible, why Paul tells us that it's so much better to be not to be rich, not to be famous. Why Jesus tells us that it's better to live a life of humility than a life of riches. Because it's so much easier to put all of that recognition on Jesus Christ than on God, than on ourselves. So when good things happen to us, we need to remember that it comes from God. We need to be humble. But also, again, something else that really kind of almost goes against the grain of Christian culture is to enjoy it. God's given us this stuff. And we live this lie that if something good happens that we can't enjoy it. Absolutely not. Go out and enjoy it. Celebrate. Be happy. Be excited. Not necessarily because it happened, but because it's a definition and it shows that God not only keeps his promises, but God has his best interests in mind. God has our best interests in mind. It's okay to celebrate. It's okay to enjoy. But just to remember that we're enjoying because God has provided. Not because of anything great that we've done. Not because of anything that I, Andrew, have done. But because God has allowed me to do so. So again, I encourage you this week when good things happen. The thing is good things do happen. Again, we live in a culture and society where we only focus on the negativity. Find the good things and then rejoice in them. Rejoice in knowing that God is there. That we can rejoice in our humility, knowing that God is greater than us. And we can rejoice in knowing that it's okay to celebrate. It's okay to enjoy the blessings that God has given us. Have a good week.